Welcome to Democracy Defenders, and tonight I am so happy to have Gabby Patterson and Elijah Brunson from NC Warren to join us to tell us about what's happening with Duke Energy's climate deception. Gabby Patterson is a climate justice coordinator at NC Warren and has been with the organization for nearly 2 years. With a background in public health, she's passionate about the intersection between community health and climate justice, and she's dedicated to helping create a healthier, more equitable future for all of us through her work. And Elijah Brunson is a climate justice organizer. Elijah is a queer black yogi from South Carolina with over a decade of service to climate justice in the Carolinas. Upholding Rachel Carson's ethics, Elijah honors the sacredness of all things. He uses embodiment practices, Kundalini yoga, and the theater of the oppressed to further investigate the human self and its relationship to nature, which informs his community building practices. North Carolina Warren, a Durham-based nonprofit with nearly 4 decades of environmental and climate justice advocacy, invites you to this presentation. And Gabby and Elijah will be presenting their material. Now, I did post a link to the short documentary that they suggested you watch before this presentation, but if you didn't get to do that, it is posted in the Facebook group. The documentary is The True Cost of Power, Duke Energy's Climate Deception. During the presentation, Gabby and Elijah will discuss Duke's energy plans for North Carolina and its impacts on our state's climate future. They will also introduce ways for you to get involved in your local community with NC Warren's Stop Climate Deception campaign, which urges Governor Stein to stop Duke's expansion of fossil fuels and suppression of renewables. Welcome, Gabby and Elijah, and thank you again for taking time to join us tonight.
Thank you so much for that great introduction, Mala. It was very thorough and was super great. Elijah and I are very excited to be here with y'all tonight. We've worked with a few different Indivisible chapters, and every single one of y'all are so amazing, so involved in the communities. So we're very happy to get to know Indivisible Lincoln County a little bit better and to share a little bit more about NC Warren. So like Mal already said, I'm Gabby Patterson. I'm the Climate Justice Coordinator, and I am joined tonight by Elijah Brunson, who's our Climate Justice Organizer. And today we're really going to be focusing on Duke Energy's plans for North Carolina and introducing NC Warren's path forward. So that's our Stop Climate Deception campaign, where we're really working to persuade the governor. Oh, sorry, I think I got a little feedback from someone. Really working to persuade the governor to stop the expansion of fossil fuels and risky nuclear power and stop Duke Energy suppression of renewables. We're really asking him to identify the climate deception that is happening. So the propaganda that North Carolina is on the right track, and also the breakthrough the deception, that the myriad of deceptive practices that Duke Energy uses to sustain its climate wrecking business model, including a recent scandal that Duke Energy is actively recruiting data centers to North Carolina to create demand that supports its massive planned build out for gas and nuclear power plants. That's something that we'll be getting into in a little bit. And this is something that scientists say that we really need. Changing Duke Energy is absolutely essential in addressing the climate crisis, and addressing Duke Energy in the next 2 to 3 years is really our goal here. So we'll spend some time focusing on that. Elijah's going to walk us through some discussion questions for the people who did watch the documentary. We're happy to hear your thoughts then. for other folks who are just wanting to talk about Duke Energy and the impacts on your lives, this will be a time for us to chit chat about that. And then towards the end, we'll have time for questions. So if people can hold their questions till the very end, we'll make sure to get to you then. So I wanted to start us off by just kind of introducing who NC Warren is. So for anyone who is unfamiliar, we are a nonprofit organization that is based in North Carolina, and we have a 38-year history of environmental justice. We operate specifically as a Duke Energy watchdog organization, and we really work to promote transparency around Duke Energy's harmful practices and empower the public to really demand a different path forward. Over the years, we've focused on a variety of things. So our name, NC Warren, is actually an acronym. It's North Carolina Waste Awareness Reduction Network. So we started as a toxic nuclear waste organization. And throughout the years, we've focused on whatever environmental issue has come to the state that has impacted our communities here in North Carolina. But we really see Duke Energy as the biggest threat to our climate future right now here in the state, but beyond. And that's why we're really focusing on holding Duke Energy accountable with our work. We're also grassroots based, and we're almost 100% funded by our membership. I'm not sure if anyone here are already NC Warren members, but we'd love for you to join our NC Warren community. And we've had quite a bit of success against Duke Energy. I think it's really important to remember that Duke Energy is a massive corporation, but they do not always win. And in collaboration with allies, so community partners, scientists, companies, businesses, we've been able to hold them accountable, specifically, with the Atlantic Coast fracked gas pipeline. And we feel confident that that's something that we can continue to do here in North Carolina. With all that being said, Elijah is going to spend some time kind of setting the climate landscape.
Thank you, Gabby, and hello again. My name is Elijah Brunson, located here in Greensboro. I will focus on climate urgency. So many of us are experiencing the weather weirding right now. And though climate change can be contentious as a concept, many of us understand that we are experiencing worsening storms, we're experiencing more intense heat waves. There are lots of droughts. I mean, Greensboro just was going through a drought not too long ago, and we just recently had rain this past week, and rising power bills that are matching the heat wave that are coming through as well. Many leading scientists, including James Hansen, highlight that we are approaching that point of no return, and the climate crisis is accelerating. So we are blowing past the global climate target of keeping warming underneath 2 degrees Celsius, right? And one of the key drivers of the climate crisis is the burning of fossil fuels, even though we have all this wonderful renewable energy technology like local solar and battery storage. And scientists highlight that major reductions in emissions this decade are vital to averting the climate crisis. Right now, people are hurting, especially the first and worst impacted communities. I'm thinking about communities in Asheville. I'm thinking about all of our communities along the coast in the east and all throughout multiple counties where when we get hit with a hurricane, they just experience long-term recovery that has spanned like over 5 years, for some decades even, for recovery. And Duke, as a major fossil fuel contributor, is one of the key drivers of the physical impacts of climate crisis, and is also simultaneously driving up our power bill. So not just the heat waves resulting in us having to use more AC, or the intense winter storms that are coming at different times causing us to use more heat. They are also simultaneously asking consistently a dual 2-year basis for increased rates so that they can build more infrastructure. But keeping all this in mind, one of a prominent environmental justice leader, Bobby Jones from Down East Colas Coalition, highlights that with Duke Energy, we are paying for our own demise, right? So even though they are a big entity and it may feel desperate, it is not quite hopeless. Our goal is in the next 2 to 3 years to change Duke Energy's practices, getting Duke Energy off the fossil fuel path would both help address the worsening climate crisis and the intensifying economic impacts of climate crisis that we're experiencing. And I will move from here into a little bit of discussion about the film. Hopefully, everyone had an opportunity to see the short documentary on YouTube. I also dropped a link in the chat. Please, you do not need to attempt to watch the documentary while listening to the presentation. We appreciate you, but it is a-okay. Just highlighting that the true cost of power about Duke Energy's climate deception is a short documentary. It was sponsored by us at NC Warren and created by Durham-based film company Biddle Films and directed by D.L. Anderson. The film exposes Duke Energy's decades-long climate deception campaign and highlights the issues most central to our state's climate future. As a reminder, at just the start of the documentary, it highlights that Duke had been deceiving the public for decades, over 50 years, about the climate crisis, trying to move the climate change from fact into theory and into hypothetical. So I have a few questions for you all, and feel free to respond in the chat or even come off mute to give an answer. I recommend using the raise hand feature on the Zoom if you are able to. I don't know with Zoom update. I think it's under the React now. Yes, you click on the React button and hit raise hand. If you are on your phone and not able to do that, it's okay. Just come off mute and say hand raise and we'll get you. So the questions are one, how did the documentary make you feel? And two, why do you think our film is called The True Cost of Power? And again, feel free to add and drop some things into the chat and or come off mute to give a couple thoughts. I
So,
love that people are pensively thinking.
so why is it called the true cost of power?
Are you asking me the question back or are you?
I'm so sorry. I did not realize I was supposed to watch that ahead of time because I would have, and I'm looking forward to seeing it. So
That is a-okay.
I probably missed an instruction somewhere. Um,
That
I
is
thought maybe,
a-okay.
but I'm anxious to see it. So I cannot answer those questions.
That is a-okay. Gabby, I'll venture a guess at the why we call it a true cost of power and would love for you to come in with any additionals. So I think a part of the true cost of power is highlighting if you look at the documentary and it talks about the town of Carrboro lawsuit and the amount of damages that people are experiencing from climate change. I think the title True Cost of Power is highlighting that there is so much cost that is related to staying on fossil fuels and burning fossil fuels that have devastated communities that industries and corporations like Duke Energy have not been held accountable for, right? Imagine if they had to pay for the damages to Asheville because they spent over 50 years deceiving the public about climate change and railroading forward with the very thing in industrial practice, which is burning of fossil fuels and highlighting frack gas as a breach fuel. Which contributed to the climate chaos, right? That devastates communities, right? If they had to pay that cost, I I assure you they would no longer be burning fossil fuels in the same way, right? They would be creating strategies for getting off of fossil fuels like this. So I believe that the true cost of power, why it's called that is highlighting that there's so much cost for the electricity production in North Carolina that utilities do not pay for. And Gabby, if you have anything to add, I definitely welcome you in.
And no, I think that was a great answer. And I think that there's so many different reasons why it's called the true cost of power. There's no right answer and there's no wrong answer. To me, something I really appreciated about the film, and I hope all those who weren't able to watch it beforehand are able to watch it afterwards and keep these questions in mind, is it goes beyond just the economic cost. It's what is the human cost? What's the environmental cost? What is the community cost? Because what Duke is doing is not just harming our pocketbooks. It's not just raising our power bills. It's not just causing damage to our towns. It's causing real human damage, which is something that we experienced during Tropical Storm Chantal, Hurricane Helene. Like communities were really hurt, and Duke Energy had a role in all of those. So I think that was something I appreciated the documentary sharing. And I think that's kind of my interpretation of the true cost of power is um, yeah, what Duke Energy is willing to pay for its power, and it's willing to use our lives, our health, and our environment to make profit. And I think for our discussion, we have a few more discussion questions. Some of them might be centered around the documentary. If you didn't watch the documentary, that's okay. You can kind of just frame it as your experience with Duke Energy, just more broadly, because I'm sure all of you guys have experiences with Duke Energy.
Yeah, thank you. I will take that as a baton pass back. Gabby, if you can go to the next set of discussion questions, and thank you for that beautiful addition to that question. So for the folks who did have the opportunity to watch the documentary or not, that's okay. So on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being absolutely not, and 10 being, oh, I just completely trust that person, entity, or thing. My question to you is in two parts. One, how much would you trust any company or person that spent millions of dollars to deceive you for 50 years? So you can put one answer there. And then this for your second part of that answer is how much do you trust Duke Energy? Like ignoring the documentary, just in general, how much did you trust Duke Energy?
Elijah, can you remind me what 1 to 10 is with?
Yes, one. Well, I guess I should do 0 to 10 because I love that a zero dropped in the chat. Thank you, whoever that was. Thank you, Beth. So 0/1 being I do not trust at all. 10 being I have full trust. I believe them. They will carry me to a sanctuary. Um, oh, okay.
So
We
I've only been in North Carolina for 2 years. So my
mm,
experience, I don't have a history with them, but I've been able to get a lot of conversation and read things that other people are saying about them, and none of it's really been good. And I see our rates have gone up significantly since my first year here. I've noticed that my bill is much higher. And
I'm
I'm
gonna say
thinking that we are compensating Duke for any extra expenditures that they had as a result of the hurricane, that they're probably hungry. They're on a money grab to recoup after that.
I'm so glad you brought that in, Mal. I will highlight that I am an environmentalist, so and my team knows that I'm trying to live without using the AC. So I am in here sweltering away on some days, and I got my power bill, and it was extremely high for a person who's like using no energy. I was like, wow, this is. This is bizarre because I could only imagine for folks who, with the way the heat has been recently, who have to use their ACs, right? Especially if they have medical conditions, because all those things worsen, that their bills are like skyrocketing now. I mean, you can even look, they even show you the history of your bill when you look at Duke Energy bill. Like you can go back, what was I last year? What was I year prior, right? And you can just
Mm-hmm.
see the jumps. It just keeps going up. And I have one more. I see some wonderful things in the chat. I just want to note that we got zeros, ones, we got a two and a three. So there's a little bit of a trust there. And I see a question that will get to when we get to the Q&A, which is why do you think oh, why do you, that's not a question. Okay, more of a statement. Why do you think I have solar? And then there's a question about does Duke Energy have renewable energy programs, which we can bring back up at the end. And the last question, and this is just a question to kind of like take home with you and think about is like, well, why do you think Duke practices climate deception? Like, why did they choose that route? And you're welcome to drop some answers in the chat as I pass it back to Gabby to talk a little bit more about Duke Energy.
Great. Thank you, Elijah. I think that's a really great baton pass is this idea of climate deception and why does Duke Energy practice it. So if people get the opportunity to watch the documentary, it really dives into the deception campaign that Duke Energy has historically led. So over those decades, it's deceived the public by saying that the climate crisis isn't real and that fossil fuels don't contribute to the climate crisis. But now we've really seen that the deception messaging has evolved, and that messaging is more greenwashing. Duke Energy saying that it's a clean energy leader, it's leading the clean energy transition, that it cares about a sustainable energy future, when in fact it makes up less than 2% of of its generated power. So we're seeing the deceptive practices continue today. It just looks very different. So Duke Energy is a multi-state corporation, but it's actually based here in North Carolina. It's based in Charlotte, and it's a state-sanctioned monopoly here in the state. And it's a monopoly, I believe, in every state that it's in as well. And it's allowed to be a monopoly because it's supposed to be regulated. So it's supposed to be regulated by the North Carolina Utilities Commission, which is then supposed to be regulated by the General Assembly. And I'm sure you guys can imagine through your own experiences with primarily, I'm assuming, the General Assembly, but maybe some people have experiences with the NCUC, is there's not a lot of regulation happening. There's a lot of rubber stamping. There's a lot of rigging. The system is set up for Duke Energy to profit and for the community to pay for it. And like that Bobby Jones quote, we are paying for our own demise. Duke Energy is one of the world's worst climate polluters. I believe it's the third largest corporate polluter in the entire United States. So it is making us pay for our own demise. Duke Energy has the largest planned expansion of fracked gas-fired power plants here in the United States. And it also has the largest planned expansion of experimental, failure-prone, dangerous nuclear plants here in the United States. Specifically with nukes, Duke has failed 18 times trying to build them. So that's midstream, them failing to complete their project. And that has cost $9 billion, of most of which was public money. So they've had a pretty rough history exploring a nuclear future, but generally they're looking to expand polluting power. They're looking to expand risky, expensive power. They are not looking to expand renewable power, and that's really been hurting us. Right now, Duke Energy is planning to spend $63 billion in the Carolinas alone in the next 5 years to fund this massive gas and nuclear expansion. And I'm curious if anyone here knows, you're welcome to take yourself off of mute or drop it in the chat. How is Duke Energy trying to justify this expansion? What could be happening in North Carolina that would need all this new gas and nuclear power?
The data centers.
Yes, exactly. Data centers. It is data center. So Duke says that it needs this massive expansion in order to fuel the huge influx of data centers to North Carolina. But in actuality, this is something that NC Warren recently helped expose, is this massive scandal. Duke executives admitted at a regulatory proceedings that they are actively and aggressively recruiting these data centers to the state using public money. So they're saying that they need all this money to build out these new gas plants, nuclear plants to accommodate these data centers. In fact, they're the ones bringing data centers into our state. And so it's like this weird circle where they're over-exaggerating our energy forecasts. It's creating energy demands that we don't actually need, but then it's looking for actors to justify that energy demand. So it's incredibly deceptive. In fact, the CEO, Harry Sedaris, even said that they have a team who their goal 7 days a week, 24 hours a day is how do we get these things signed quicker? How do we get data centers brought into our state quicker? So Duke Energy is playing a very is playing a pretty big role in data centers coming to our state, and they're manufacturing the very demand that they say necessitates their devastating fossil fuel and nuclear build out. And this is an issue that is actually impacting Lincoln County specifically. So while there aren't any large data centers in the county that I know of, there are several in neighboring counties, especially Mecklenburg and Catawba County. You guys are also home to a large gas-powered plant that produces, I guess, enough electricity to power 300,000 homes, and also holds the Guinness World Record for the world's most powerful simple cycle gas plant. So it's a massive gas plant. And with this revelation about Duke Energy's recruitment efforts, it's likely that Lincoln County is either going to be on its list for data centers, or that its gas station, its turbine station, will be expected to provide energy to those data centers that they're bringing to neighboring counties. Because we have that large gas plant here in Lincoln County, it's either going to be connected to a neighboring data center, or they will see Lincoln County as a spot to bring a data center in the future. So that's just to say that Lincoln County is included in these impacts. I'm sure you guys have known that, but moving forward too, you guys will continue to be impacted by Duke Energy's practices. But beyond just the environmental harms, the economic impacts of Duke Energy's plans are also pretty staggering, which some people were already talking about with their power bills. And specifically, this expansion could triple our power bills in the coming years. In a time when people are already struggling to pay their bills, when we're already facing worsening storms, we're already facing soaring temperatures, Duke executives are really just adding insult to injury by prioritizing corporate profit over the people of North Carolina. And that's exactly what they're doing. In the same regulatory proceedings where Duke executives admitted to recruiting data centers, a public staff witness who represents the North Carolina Utilities Commission said openly, "We feel that you are prioritizing the shareholder over the ratepayer." And that's exactly what we're seeing with Duke Energy right now. So that's really why we launched our Stop Climate Deception campaign. We really see it as vital and urgent to break through Duke's deception, that this massive build out is needed, but also we want to flip the narrative that North Carolina is on the right track in the face of the climate crisis, when in fact major changes are needed. So I think that's something maybe you guys are familiar with. You've heard it from our political leaders, you've heard it from community members. North Carolina is a clean energy leader. We're on the right track. We are absolutely not doing everything that we can to address the climate crisis, and we need to flip that script. We need to be honest about where we're at so that we can actually start to implement changes that will help us mitigate the climate crisis. And specifically, our campaign calls on Governor Stein to stop Duke's expansion of fossil fuels and its suppression of renewables, and to really lead the call right now for a statewide moratorium on data centers. And we're specifically calling for a statewide moratorium because when there's local moratoriums, that just means a data center is getting pushed to another community, and maybe a community that can't fight against it, that doesn't have the resources, that doesn't have the manpower. So we want to really ensure that everyone in North Carolina is protected from data centers. And that's why we're calling for Governor Stein to lead that charge. We've already had a lot of great momentum with this campaign. We had 61 scientists co-sign this strategy and send a letter to Governor Stein. We've had over 365 businesses and organizations and elected officials sign on to a resolution in support of this. And roughly 30,000 individuals have actually emailed Governor Stein to press him on this campaign. And these numbers are all growing. Stein is starting to feel the pressure. In fact, the email that people were reaching out to, those 30,000 people, it was changed. They stopped accepting emails, and so we had to find a different email to reach out to him at. So Stein is definitely feeling the pressure, but we really need to continue to build that pressure to make him move. We need to prove to him that the people of North Carolina are more powerful than Duke Energy. Again, the scientists are just very clear that this strategy is absolutely essential, that we need to change Duke Energy. Duke Energy, again, is the third largest corporate polluter in the United States, which means it's one of the largest, period. And so we cannot address the climate crisis without also addressing Duke Energy. And specifically, because we don't want to just bring the negatives and not propose a solution, NC Warren has a sharing solar proposal. So we're proposing a way for local solar and batteries to be expanded quickly in North Carolina. We really see this as the fastest, cheapest, and fairest way to phase out fossil fuels. If anyone is interested, we can drop more information in the chat. But we really see that as the path forward for North Carolina, rather than investing in more fossil fuels and more nuclear. And with all that being said, I'm going to hand it back over to Elijah, who's going to go into a little bit more about why we're focusing on Governor Stein.
Thank you, Gabby. We have often got the question, like, why Governor Stein? A recent example that we just got notified of is that the governor in New York passed an executive order putting a moratorium on data centers, right? For just reminding folks that the governor has executive power that can be used when other channels are not available. But also just want to highlight that the situation is hyper urgent, right? We are at the point where we're experiencing the climate crisis, And so we must take drastic action now, pulling whatever levers we can to pull Duke Energy off that fossil fuel path. And any campaign that is aimed at getting us off of fossil fuels, we really need a leader who's going to step up now. And particularly given that we've had a lot of national failures around climate, that is important that we have some, like a state level leader step up and be a champion for climate change. Governor Stein has the visibility, the authority, and the responsibility as the governor of North Carolina to tell North Carolinians the truth about climate change, which is that we're in the wrong course and that we must set the course right. And just a reminder, like Gabby said, people power does in fact work. Like NC Warren and allies have defeated Duke Energy many times. As Gabby was mentioning earlier, the goal of a statewide moratorium is to prevent from them putting a data center in one community and it says, hey, we're going to go to another community because this community has resisted, which happened between Apex and Vance County, where Apex said absolutely not. And they said, well, we're just going to move on over and bring this data here, right? And it's also a throwback to the Atlantic Coast Pipeline, which had a similar thing where it was driving through low income communities because originally its charted course was actually through more prominent and wealthy places in Eastern North Carolina. But after the complaints, they then chose to drive the course of that pipeline through rural, predominantly marginalized and Black and Brown communities. Ultimately, we're grateful to our allies and ourselves for the work that we did to stop that. But that's just a reminder that a part of corporation strategy is to find that path of least resistance. And that's why we really need the governor to step up and step in to be a climate champion so that industry do not try and find those low resistance places and keep us stuck on the fossil fuel path. Um, and just highlighting, like Gabby said, the Utilities Commission is rigged in Duke's favor, and it has been for a while, which means every 2 years or every other year, Duke Energy is going to come back with yet another freight increase, yet another need to expand fossil fuel use in the Carolinas, even though, and someone made a mention in the chat, like even though if we exclude the data centers, generally energy use in North Carolina has stayed relatively stable over the past like decade, right? There hasn't been a substantial increase. And so what Duke is using this time as a part of the deception to highlight the projected increase in energy usage is the data centers, right? So they're going to continue to use those backdoor pathways. And we really need for Governor Stein to stand up. And some folks have asked, has he responded? Insiders have said that he does agree with us and he agrees with the scientists. And he's still like on the fence, right? Now, we are grateful that, we did do an event in front of the governor's mansion on May 6th, where we were joined by elected officials and climate scientists really calling on the governor to take action. And I'm really grateful that, if we think about what Stein can do, in addition to using his voice, is that he had called for a rollback on some of the tax exemptions on data centers, right? He called for that. And the legislators got in line and made it happen, right? So it's a reminder that when you have strong leadership at the top, things do change, right? And so we are also asking for him to call for an end to Duke Energy's recruitment of data centers and that statewide moratorium, and for him to promote our sharing solar proposal as a better alternative. So focusing in on local solar and battery storage. In a way, it's like democratizing our energy usage, right? So that it is more locally sourced and you help reduce the cost of energy because you reduce the need for transmission corridors. And by all measures, help begin phasing out fossil fuels and improving our community resilience. And if nothing else, for the governor to make it very clear to Duke Energy leaders that they have to change their business model, right? They cannot continue a business model that says, how can we continue to build the largest capital expenditure project so that we can get a 10% or more return and every 2 years then ask for an additional on top of that rate increase from our customers, right? They cannot continue to squeeze us indefinitely while also making us pay for our own demise. Shifting from here into some actions that we can take individually. Number one, If you look at the screen, you can actually follow that beautiful QR code there or just go to stopdukeenergy.com. And there's already a pre-written message in there. I welcome you to read it. It has some information both about our campaign and the call for the data center moratorium. And you can send that on to Governor Stein. If you scroll down on that page, you'll actually see a link to our resolution. This resolution you can take it to local businesses. Like if there are businesses that you're in deep relationship, maybe you are running a business, or maybe you have friends that are elected officials, or like maybe Indivisible in Lincoln County would like to sign on to the resolution as a collective body, can join the resolution and join that call on Governor Stein to move us off the fossil fuel path and tell North Carolinians the truth about climate change, which is that we are on the wrong track. And lastly, of course, if you would like, you can join NC Warren. Again, we're nearly 100% funded by our public and our members. And you can go to ncwarren.org and either go over to the right and go to the donate, or you can scroll down a little bit and sign up so that you can get our newsletters and updates about actions that we're taking and news updates that come out pretty regularly as we engage in this battlefront with Duke Energy to protect North Carolinians' future. And with that, I pass it on over to Gabby to close us out.
Yes, thank you so much, Elijah. I also have my email up on the screen. If anyone has any additional questions or thoughts that don't get answered today, you're more than welcome to reach out to me and I will make sure to get back to you. But yeah, we really appreciate you guys taking the time with us tonight. Before we jump into questions, I just wanted to share a quote. It's by the previous senator now, Greg Meyer. He was featured in our documentary. He said, "We can force Duke Energy to do just about anything. We just need the political will." And I think that's a really powerful reminder to kind of close out this presentation and for y'all to take home with you. Hopefully you can take some of those actions with us tonight. We're really hoping you can join us, the climate scientists, and really demanding that Governor Stein get North Carolina on the right track. So with all that being said, we're going to take some time for questions. So people are welcome to drop them in the chat. I think all the questions that were already in the chat have been answered, but if not, please feel free to just highlight those, drop questions in the chat, or you're welcome to raise your hand, take yourself off of mute, and we'd be happy to answer. Hi, yes, Anne.
And it's not really a question, but I think the presentation's been really interesting because I think for all of us that are here, this is not a right or left issue.
Mm-mm.
And I think if we, like for us in this little community where we're at, I'm sure everywhere, feels very divided, right? But if we can just, it's money and you start hitting people's pocketbooks. So I think this would be a really an easier issue to talk to some of our friends that don't align with us politically to hear the clue. It's not about the science, it's about your pocketbook right now. I mean, it is about science, but for everybody here, it's about your pocketbook. You said 3 times. That's a big bill.
Yeah.
That's a big bill every month.
Yeah, and I think I was just reading that over the past 4 years, our bills have already increased by 45%. So we've already been hit hard. We're going to continue to be hit hard. And I fully agree that this is not right or a left issue. There's lots of different ways to frame this. I think economics really hits home with everyone. But also it's not a right or a left issue, even in those regulating Duke Energy. We see that people on both sides of the aisle take money from Duke Energy, and people on both sides of the aisle have actually helped pass bills that support Duke Energy. So it's it's just a really important reminder that we're all in this together, and that, you know, some of our politicians really answer to money over values, and we really just need to make sure that as a community, our voices are more important than the money that they're taking from Duke. But yeah, I really appreciate you sharing that, Anne.
I think Beth is next with the question.
Yes.
A couple things. Do we know, does Governor Stein take money from Duke Energy? Do we know? Just wondering. Just a question to think about.
Yeah, no, that is a great question. I'm actually not sure if he takes money from Stein or from Duke Energy. I haven't seen anything publicly about that. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. Okay. No problem.
Yeah, but
a couple other things, just quick. Sorry. So I know Vicky mentioned Jeff Jackson. Yes, Jeff Jackson has been on this in some way, shape, or form. I can't remember exactly what. I know I've seen a video about it, but Duke Energy has been asking for an 18% increase. And I saw a video with Jeff Jackson saying they have come down now. Duke Energy has come down now to 11%, which tells you, everything you need to know, really. But I believe that Jackson also said that whatever this effort was against Duke Energy would continue, even though they have come down 7%. That is a lot for just some pushback to get them to come down. That tells you how much they're asking for. And just one last thing. So I complained to Duke Energy via email, automated whatever, got an automated answer. And it even showed me, as someone mentioned, maybe Elijah, maybe you mentioned it, my usage this year versus my usage last year, and how I'm actually using less and my bill is higher. And they told me it's actually our fee increases. That's why it's not that you're using more. It's all right. Yeah, I knew it. I'm glad you said it, but yeah, it's way too high already. And they're asking for 2026 and 2027, 2028. So it's crazy, and I really appreciate what you guys are doing. And not enough people are aware, obviously. North Carolinians, I don't think, know anything about what's going on with Duke Energy.
Yeah, and Duke Energy likes that. Like, they want to operate in secrecy. They don't want people to know what they're really doing. They don't want to know what their business practice actually entails. So it's really important. Like, part of our work is just telling people, like, being honest with people about what's happening, because education is such an important part in getting people organized and getting people ready to take action. But yeah, I just want to touch on the 2 points that you made following. So yeah, Attorney General Jeff Jackson, we are seeing him take a stronger stance, which is amazing. We're very excited. He intervened in the rate hike case. He also intervened in the carbon plan case, which is where Duke proposes, it's where it has its energy forecast and what it says it needs. So when it said it needed fossil fuels and nuclear plants for data centers, that's where those conversations happen. And Duke Energy did come down on its rate increase. I will clarify, Duke Energy does that every time. Duke Energy always gives a number that is outrageously high. They negotiate it down, and then they get the number that they actually want. So it is great to see that Jeff Jackson intervened. This was unprecedented in the sense that Duke Energy proposed its own rate increase rather than negotiating with the Utilities Commission about it. Likely it's the number they still wanted anyways, but Jeff Jackson did follow up and say that this number is still way too high, that we still need to bring it down. So we're seeing some great energy from Jeff Jackson. So we're really excited about that. And then, yeah, just about your bill, it's outrageous. We're really seeing that the electricity use actually is, in spite of population growth, we're actually seeing that electricity use has actually stabilized, or it's even fallen slightly in North Carolina. So there's really no justification for Duke Energy building out all this nuclear, all this gas, other than data centers and other than profit. They make profit off of those big capital projects. So no, it is not you. There's nothing wrong with your energy use habits. It is absolutely Duke Energy trying to scam you and take more money from you. So thank you for sharing, Beth. Vicki.
Well, I got my Jeff Jackson question answered, so I'm going to segue to another one. It seems to me that in the Jeff Jackson video, he said something about that Duke is allowed a certain amount of profit by the Utilities Commission, and that was one of the ways he got it down, was to show that they were going to make a lot more than the Utilities Commission said they could. Something like a 10% profit. Considering the billions of dollars that Duke takes in every year, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So Duke Energy has a return on equity of 10%, which is a 10% markup on all those big builds that they construct, and it is one of the highest in the nation. They have one of the highest returns on equity of any utility in the country. So it is definitely a very high number. And when maybe Elijah, you remember this better than me, when Duke Energy proposed its rate decrease, they went into how they were able to find ways to decrease their initial rate proposal. And one was, I can't remember if it was the return on equity or it was some profit margin of theirs. They decreased it like by 0.4%. And that's what got us from 18% rate increase to an 11% by just marginally decreasing their profit margins. They were able to save us so much money. So it just goes to show that they are really prioritizing profit. I mean, they made record profits last year, so that's really their priority.
Well, is there any way that ordinary citizens can speak to the Utilities Commission and say, this is ridiculous? Or do they take comments? I mean, the Board of Elections, the State Board of Elections takes comments, and a number of other, regulatory agencies take comments. I just wondered if the Utilities Commission was one of those.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is a great question. I don't think NC Warren has been involved in any proceeding where there's an opportunity for public comment in front of the Utilities Commission. So we specifically have gotten involved in the carbon plan hearings before with the Utilities Commission. And like I said, that's when Duke Energy basically just explains its energy plan for North Carolina for the next few years. And in that, they have expert witness testimonials, and we'll typically provide our own expert to testify and basically just challenge what Duke Energy is proposing. But actually, in this recent carbon plan that just happened, I think like a month ago, they dismissed nearly all of the expert witnesses and said, we don't need to hear from you. And that it was just a form of silencing us because we didn't get an opportunity to get in front of the Utilities Commission and actually share verbally what we had to say. We could share our written comments, but it was just a move to silence our experts and to silence people challenging their plans. And Elisha, if I'm missing anything, please feel free to jump in.
I don't think you're missing anything, but I'm just checking my own memory. Now, when they have the rate hearings, that is open for public comment, but is that public comment directly to the Utilities Commission or to a subset? Okay.
Yeah, that's actually a great point. During the rate hike case, there were opportunities for public comment, and they had those in Durham. They had in a few different other places. The Utilities Commission, the commissioners didn't necessarily have to be there for those public comments. So there were some where there was one commissioner present for your public comments. So that's a good point. There was an opportunity for public comment there, but the commissioners weren't even obligated to show up.
Take a quick look at the next proposal. Here it is on your screen.
I just want to chime in here because it's making me think of the county commissioner meetings where what you want to talk about is not on the actual agenda, then it's almost like you're at the top shouting into the void and hopefully someone listens. And I think when you have the rate hearings and you don't have maybe just one commissioner coming, it feels like it's very unlikely that it will move back into the echo chamber. And I think that's part of like Duke Energy's deception, being able to submit plans into rooms where many people can't intervene and engage. And if NC Warren hadn't intervened, like officially intervened in the case, there's a lot of information that we wouldn't have gleaned, right? For example, learning that their entire forecast, not the 1/3 they originally stated, but their entire forecast for the projected increased energy usage in North Carolina is exclusively data centers, right? Like without us intervening, that information would not have become public knowledge, right? We would not have learned that they are manufacturing their own demand, right? And then putting that on the backs of North Carolinians. I do, Gabby, want to bring in, I think there's a couple of questions in the chat. I will answer a couple of them. So, are they taking the coal plants offline? Now, this is a tricky question. They have no plans and intention of taking the coal plant offline, even if they quote unquote did, because they cared about renewable energy. What is it? Is it HB 730 that just got introduced? Well, not just got introduced, but introduced in the past 2 months that highlighted that unless there was a nuclear plant proposal being submitted for approval, they would not be permitted to take a coal plant offline. And that implies that that doesn't even include renewable energy in the mix of that conversation, right? So for coal to be cycled down, a nuclear plant must come online. I don't think we've highlighted this in this conversation, or maybe we did, which is Duke's plans, like their first nuclear plant that will come online won't be until 2037. So imagine what that means for our future if every coal plant to be cycled down needs an application of a nuclear plant coming in, and the first one won't come online until 2037, right? That is squandering our chances at climate protection thoroughly, right? And regardless of what gets instituted in law, we can always push for our legislator, always push for our governors to say that this does not work for North Carolinians. We need a different path forward. What is
And
Duke Energy's plans for renewable energy outside of blocking most renewable energy practices and reducing the incentives, like with net metering, reducing the incentives that people have to get solar themselves? While I don't know the specifics, I do recall that there was, what was it? The North Carolina Utilities Commission said that Duke Energy needed to like reevaluate the solar energy rollout. And so until they like complete that, essentially an assessment, they won't be moving forward with solar energy for some time until that assessment is done, which means that e- even if the biggest if, bigger than the screen, um, Duke Energy wanted to move forward with solar energy at rapid pace. Technically, there is this agreement that says it must be assessed first to figure out if Duke can meet a projected goal of getting solar. I don't even think it was that high. What was it, like 7 to 10% of their overall, like not even that high energy production for solar energy, if they could even reach that goal. And once they've assessed if that goal is reachable, then they can move forward with industrialized solar practices. So I don't think Duke has any intentional plans for solar energy or renewable energy in general, and they don't have any plans that would eclipse them continuing to use fossil fuel energy for North Carolina. And arguably, with the quote unquote advent of data centers, I doubt that they have any interest in moving forward with solar in the near future because they are literally out right now trying to make contracts with data centers to get them to come to North Carolina so that they can then pair them with fossil fuel infrastructure, particularly frac gas and turbine combustion plants. Uh, That was a longer response to that question than I anticipated, but thank you for your patience to listen to me.
Elijah, I think we have one hand still up, and that's for Beth.
Okay. Yeah, go
Sorry,
ahead.
just two more things. Glad what you said, Gabby, about the usage, North Carolinians' usage of energy is really pretty much stable, or maybe even going down a bit. Because from what I've read, and it hasn't been a lot, but what I have read was that Duke Energy was blaming growth on the need for all these rate increases, all this growth. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. But what you're saying is that the usage is not reflective of all this growth. So number one, I know they blame a lot of this, the reason that they need the increases on growth. Number two, so what got me riled up about Duke Energy, it's probably been 2 years ago, and I was trying to find the article today, could not find it. But it said two things that of course the rate increases, which were just made me livid. And secondly, that Duke Energy was actually going back on commitments that they had made to clean energy, reversing themselves. I don't know if that's after this president or what, but commitments they had made toward clean energy were now kind of being rolled back. And I just was beside myself. So anyway, that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Cynthia?
Hey, so I just want to make a couple of comments because I think it's really important. So Kathy Hochul, the governor of New York, has put a moratorium on data centers understanding that there's a need for these data centers, but the moratorium is to make sure that they the state puts some regulations and including removing tax exemptions in order for companies to build data centers. The second thing is, to what Beth mentioned just a minute ago, there's 157 people moving to Charlotte every day. That's amazing. I don't know what the number is for the state of North Carolina, but in the county of Mecklenburg, 157 people move in every day. So there's a volume of electricity and power that is necessary to accommodate the growth, not just in Mecklenburg, but obviously in the state. The third thing I want to say is, I understand that Duke is a huge corporation, and yeah, sure, they're ripping us off. But I come from I come from Long Island, where Long Island Lighting Company and Con Edison were the biggest ripoffs of electricity for the people there to this day. And my power bills are less than I paid for up on Long Island, to the tune of probably 100%. And I'm not making that up. So my point is when we talk to Governor Stein, there needs to be a moratorium so that we can understand and figure out a way for these data centers to be built in an efficient manner, force them to do the things that are expensive to them so that they contribute to the power, they pay what they need to pay to the power grid, remove their tax exemptions. The biggest thing is water, right? And that's what needs to happen. But people need to understand that these data centers are going to be necessary for our future, and especially with the growth that one sees in the state of North Carolina and certainly Mecklenburg County. And the other thing is that, there are ways to use some of the resources within Duke Power to get reductions in your power bills. They will come and do an efficiency on your house, right? Come into your house and figure out where you're wasting energy. And people don't utilize those resources. I'm not saying that they're the greatest thing on, sliced bread by any means. I get the fact that they're a big company and they're doing everything they can to make money. I get all that. I don't disagree with any of it. But compared to a lot of other power companies in the United States, they're pretty decent. It's just my opinion. That's it.
Thanks, Cindy. And your question will be the last one.
Thanks for, and I know you're real close to the end, so I apologize. I'm just curious, can you guys, do you have the information? Because I know we're attacking climate and we're doing it politically, like through a political avenue, but there's a huge climate impact with the water, but also the temperature right around, right? What are some of the things people are really experiencing when those data centers come in right next to their homes?
I can jump in here really quickly, and Gabby, feel free to add. I can share what I know I'm familiar with. So I think I would say the most obvious ones, because people just don't know it's a data center until like it's active and then like you hear it, right? Like it's constant noise pollution. I think there's been new research that's been coming out around the like physical maladies that result from constant noise pollution, and particularly how the particular type of sound that comes from data center has a particular impact on the body, especially when you're exposed to it long term. While studies haven't like quite dove into the impact on like animals and wildlife, it is have a distressing impact on humans. It takes an excessive amount of water, both in terms of like providing the energy, and it needs to be able to cool itself because it gets hot. And if you mix that in with climate change and the increasing heat waves, that means it'll need even more water. And especially with the hyperscale data centers that they're trying to bring here, right? Like I think Stoke County, there was a proposal for like a 1,500, is that right? 1,500, 1,500 square acre proposal for a data center, right? That's a massive amount of land that is also being used for the data center, in addition to energy consumption. And please note that there's a good bit of data centers that likely won't just land right beside a power plant. And if they do, I'm thinking about the Amazon data center right now. Like on Amazon, there, what is it like? It's almost 600 nuclear generators, like not nuclear, diesel generators. Like there will be, I think, 577 on site, and then Duke Energy preemptively is going to build, what is it, like 57 combines, whatever the word is, to support that data center, right? So there's a lot of, with the data centers coming in, wedding us to some fossil fuel infrastructure that we know have devastating impacts on people as well, right? One thing that we had advocated for a very long time is that if the data centers are indeed inevitable, which we don't believe that they are, is that if they do come, that they try to have as much renewable energy as possible on site and like really cover, essentially, I'm going to say this non-politically correct, cover their own asses when it comes to the resources that they're draining. But regardless, the intensive drain on like water resources, especially given that many municipalities are experiencing droughts, is probably one of the larger concerns. And I don't know how you all are experiencing this current political climate that we're in, but I think technology has this beautiful ability to help us connect with one another, right? We're connecting with each other right now through the Zoom interface, right? So when it's used well, technology has the ability to connect us. But I think considering who's in power, I have concerns around how they might use data centers, especially given that a good bulk of data center has been used to, like, what is it, Plantier, which is like surveillance, right? They're using this technology to actually essentially aim at people. And I don't believe that the people we have in power right now would want to really wield that level of technology. So yes, putting in lots of guardrails for data centers, if they do inevitably come, will be absolutely necessary. And the question is, do we actually need them for our future, right? Because we've lived without them up to this point. Do we need the mega scale that they're wanting to use them for now or not? And if we do, what are the rails that protect communities, to protect us globally at this point from those things being used poorly?
Yeah, I suspect there's also a lot of additional radiation in those areas and temperature change.
Yeah, I
Because
think there's a note that the temperature change near a data center is a couple degrees actually because of how much energy it uses.
it creates its own little microclimate of
Yeah.
climate change in that area, I would think.
But once again, that you can blame it on Duke Energy if you want, encouraging people. Of course, they're going to encourage these data centers to move to North Carolina. I get it, from just from a marketing and making more money kind of thing. But at the end of the day, let's be realistic. We're a political organization that has our goal is to put pressure on our politicians. And these data centers are going up left and right with no regulation. They can easily create a self-cooling system, a closed loop system of cooling where they're not draining our lakes and our water resources. And it's expensive to these data centers, and the politicians are not putting these regulations in place. It's like overnight, these data centers have become a big issue because our regulators have gotten rid of regulations, right, in this administration, but also not just them, Congress, etc., have not done their jobs to make sure that they're regulating what they need to regulate. And that's what's happening. And these data centers are going to be necessary, but they can be developed in a way that is environmentally safe and sound. And with regard to the noise pollution and the temperature increases, all that can be managed if these data centers invest in the things that need to happen in order to protect our environment. So it's not just Duke Power, it's these data centers, and it's our legislators who have neglected to see what was going to happen in the future and regulate on it. That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
I guess I'm kind of pissed about it.
I appreciate the passion and want to highlight the beauty of getting a moratorium in place so that the research can be done, right? So that people can figure out what guardrails can be put in place during the moratorium time so that they're just not popping up everywhere. And then we're just essentially back building and trying to retrofit massive data center facilities, right, with technology to make sure that they are meeting the needs of the local communities and the global community, right? So again, recommend calling for that statewide moratorium so that research can be done. So pushing our politicians to get them to take those types of actions will be very important. And Mal, I know you've been trying to wrap us up for a
No,
little
that's
bit.
okay.
I will
I'm
gently
gonna
pass
throw
it
the
back to
baton
you.
back to Gabby to wrap it up and say
Ah,
goodnight.
go ahead, Gabby.
All right. Well, yeah, thank you, everyone. Thank you for staying a little bit over time as well. We were happy to answer all of your questions. Again, if you have additional thoughts or questions, my email was on the screen. I can put it in the chat as well. It's just gabriella@ncwarren.org. We'd be happy to stay in touch with everyone. If Indivisible Lincoln County is interested in signing on to our resolution in support of the campaign, that would be really amazing. If you guys can just go to our stopdukeenergy.com website and just explore some of the actions there, that would be really great. But we've had a really great time talking with you guys, learning a little bit more about who you are as a group, and hearing